How to not sweat the small stuff. Do you find yourself being the type of person that gets easily triggered by the little things? Or we're going to talk about how to not do that quite so much. And we can speak from experience because I used to be a very, very easily triggered person. You can contest to that. You've known me for what, like 10 years? How long have we known each other?
Almost 10 years together. Apparently, you've got to keep counting the years we're together, and I don't get to reset when we get married. So, yes, almost 10.
Yep, so you've known me for a decade, and I used to be the kind of person who would sweat a lot of the small stuff, and you're very naturally the type of person that does not sweat the small stuff at all, and so I've kind of taken on board some of the things that you've taught me, but this is going to be all about strategies and when to not sweat the small stuff and how to actually do that. So, Ricky, how do you not sweat the small stuff?
Janelle, I love how they start with questions toward me.
Yes, I don't know how else to start.
So I suppose, for me personally, it gets broken into two things. So let's talk about the first one first. So you've either got, I'll mention both of them. So it's sweating the small stuff externally and sweating the small stuff internally. Right? So externally is the first one. It's the easiest one that most people can relate to sweating the small stuff or overthinking or overanalyzing things. It's generally when someone, and I'm terrible for this, I will generally blurt out words without passing through any sort of filter between my brain and my mouth. And lots of time people get offended. And it's no ill intent.
You heard it here, guys. Ricky is offensive to everyone because he has no filter. His filter is broken. It's like a McDonald's ice cream machine that's always broken.
They've got an ice cream machine? I swear it's just like a ghost.
The McFlurry machine, eh?
No, it's a ghost. I swear it's like one of those ghost things on the...
If you can get a McFlurry, you're having a good bloody day.
But no, for me it comes down to when you're overthinking something, it's how well you know the person and do I have any control over the outcome? So for me, it's actually two things really. So if someone says something offensive, so let's go to that part first. It's how well do I know them? So, like you said, you've known me for 10 years, you know I've got no filter between the brain and the mouth. So 9 times out of 10, I'm not trying to be offensive. It's just I'm saying what someone wanted.
You don't have ill intent. It's just that some people may take offence to what you've said.
Correct.
It's not that you're offensive, but it's that they have interpreted it to be offensive.
Correct. And the other thing, which I think is probably more relatable to this topic we're talking about, is people sweat the things that are out of their control. And you've just got to identify, do I have any control over the situation? If the answer is no, then there's absolutely no point in getting worked up over it. Right?
It took me a long time to learn that.
Is there anything you could have contributed to change the outcome? Physically at that point in time. If the answer is no, drop it.
If the answer is yes, beat yourself up until the end of time. That's what I'm hearing.
No, that's a different podcast. But if the answer is no, and you physically there's nothing you could do to change the outcome.
Yeah, well, you have no control over it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And this is probably a bad example, but
oh god, Ricky's about to offend me.
it's probably a terrible example. It's the only one that comes to mind. Gambling, right? So, if, like betting on the TAB for me. I'm betting on something, and I'm like, cool, it's money I'm willing to lose. It's like, cool, yep, sweet. I'll place a bet on, the All Blacks playing tonight, so I place a bet on the All Blacks. If the All Blacks lose, there's no point in me getting grumpy. I'm not playing in the game.
You're not going to beat your wife as a result?
No, I'm not going to do that. But like, I physically couldn't have changed the outcome. All I'm doing is placing a bet from an outsider's perspective.
Because you weren't running on the field, you're not an All Black.
I wasn't running.
Really,
I'm not.
You have no control.
I'm not coaching.
Bystander. You're
correct. So I've made a decision to be involved with something that's ended up with a negative outcome that I had no control over. So there's no point in me getting upset over it.
Yeah, the control was in your hands when you decided to place that bet.
But that's what
so all the accountability would be on your own shoulders.
Correct, that's what I said. I chose to put myself in that situation.
Yeah, definitely.
A different story if I was like, I played football today and we drew 4-4. If I put a bet on the game, then for me personally, I probably beat myself up a bit because I put 2 over the bar. We could have won.
Yep, so you sabotaged your own winnings.
Yeah, I should have bet against us. Would be great. But stuff like that, you've just got to really work out. Could any part of me have changed the overall outcome? If the answer is no, don't worry about it. Drop it. Let it go. Move on.
Yeah, learn from it, right?
Yeah. I mean, speaking from experience, you used to hold on to a lot of things you had no control over.
I have always been very negatively wired and had a very short fuse. I'm not the only one. I think a lot of people like this. The majority of us, we have a lot of negative thoughts on a daily basis and repeated over and over again. So it's pretty normal, but it wasn't very good, right? Like, I would get worked up over small, tiny things that I had no control over and I couldn't change. And so all that would do is put me in a state of stress and unhappiness. And that obviously would affect family life too. Like, I'm sure me being unhappy would make you feel unhappy as well. But I have utilised a lot of tools over the years to help me break out of that, because you're such a cool, calm and collected person and you manage to not get worked up over most things. Unless something's big. If something's big, you get worked out, which is very natural. But for the little things, I just admired your ability to just let things go and to not... It was like water off a duck's back, and I'm like, I want some of that. I want some of that protective layer from the little tiny things that don't actually matter, like getting offended easily or getting triggered by little things. So a lot of tools that worked for me is, well, for one, just getting a lot more self-aware. Recognizing when I'm getting triggered, and the way you recognize it is because you feel intense negative emotions. So if you feel anxious or you feel sad, you feel unhappy, it's like, why do I feel like this? What caused this? And actually asking yourself, why am I feeling like this? What has triggered this? And then when you understand what the trigger is, like it's probably something quite small a lot of the times, or something you have no actual concrete evidence that is true, it's like questioning it. Is that actually true? And if it is true, like you have real evidence that will stack up in the court of law, then it's like, can I do anything about this? If yes, great, do that thing. What can I do? Go and do the things. And if you can't, let it go. You have no control over the situation, then why expend your energy and feel like crap over something that you really can't control?
I agree. And I think you've done so well.
Thank you. Yeah, oh my goodness. It used to be such a short fuse, but over the years, yeah, using that was probably the first tool. And that's what got me into coaching. I was like, if I can change this reactive nature within myself and this negative nature that I had to become more positive and more growth-minded, and to be more emotionally resilient, then now I'm helping other people do the same, because it is easy. There are tools, you can learn them, and you can rewire your own thought patterns to be more in line with how you want to think and feel.
No, I agree. I think we've both taught each other so much throughout our 9 and something months being together.
Hey, I'm pretty sure that when we started dating, it was for a wee while, wasn't it?
It was. You were reluctant.
I probably dragged you along for a bit.
You were reluctant to make it official.
Very indecisive. So I was like, drag him along.
I know. Typical Janelle, even the wedding things. I'm very indecisive. I think the other thing to mention, and it took me a while to get used to this, and I sort of cracked it when I left school. I wish I'd learned it a bit better at school, but we spoke about external things, things that are physically out of your control. Things
like COVID,
the
economy.
Things you get worked up on that are out of your control. I think...
The petrol prices.
Yeah. National, things that are just out of your control. I think the other thing is internal, and this is something I'm quite proud of that I worked quite hard on personally for myself, is if you said something to me, for an example, and I might find it offensive, I might not, or I might take it the wrong way, or I might start thinking, did she mean this about me? Was she insinuating the past? Is it, you know what I mean? We might start overanalyzing or start sweating the small stuff.
Personalizing is like something we do very naturally.
Correct. Whenever anyone says anything, you always relate it to something you've done.
About me?
Correct.
Do they hate me?
I always
What
go.
did I do?
I always go to the internal battle, and it's not even a battle for me anymore. It's just internally, I'm thinking exactly the same thing externally. Is this a battle I want to pursue, or is it something that, like me, they've probably just got no filter and it was just in the heat of the moment, or it's just a
The ice cream
conversation.
machine is broken.
You know what I mean? Is this something that they didn't mean? Is it worth arguing? Like, if I argue this, what's the outcome going to be? And these are all things you have internally. Like, for me, if you were to say something, and internally I'm like, I disagree, am I going to argue? If I decide, yes, I'm going to argue, this could result in a fight, right? We might fight and I might end up sleeping on the couch, or you might end up sleeping on the couch for the night, which is a negative outcome. But internally I'm like, did she really mean that? Probably not. She was probably just trying to say it in a different way, but it came across that way. You know what? I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to leave it, and it's going to move on. And 9 times out of 10, or 9.9 times out of 10, you've just said it because it's the way you speak, you know, and you've just said it. And if it really bothered me, and it was something that internally I decided to, you know, step aside and let go, but if it was still in the back of the mind, the smart thing would be to do, and this is where a lot of people struggle, is to speak up and raise it.
Communication.
Correct. Being transparent. So,
Like, hey, when you said X, did you mean Y? Because
Yes.
that's how I interpreted it.
correct. And this
And
is
that
how it
is-
made me feel.
Yeah, and this was the consequences of that, essentially, what you just said. But it's like bringing to their awareness what they said and how you interpreted it, and how it made you feel.
DJ Nelly.
There has to be one of these in every single podcast. Maybe one day we will be able to do a podcast without effing it up.
Absolutely not. We'd lose listeners. We'd lose the 10 of them.
They might listening at it's like, where's Wally? Where's the F up going to be? And who's it going to be? Maybe they could start betting.
Just don't
To do a
overanalyze.
wager. I don't even remember what I was talking about.
Just talking about, you know, speaking up. So if you're internally analysing things and it is something that you feel is potentially worth raising, is to raise it with that person. Because nine times out of 10, they probably didn't mean to offend you, or they probably don't realise what they said, you interpreted it in a certain way.
Yes.
And it's just communicating with that person. And yes, you can
Can I please take the microphone? Can I please talk? So just on that, everyone has a different version of reality. We all have lived different lives and we have different belief systems, different ways of looking at the world. So I could say one sentence to you and you are so offended, and I could say it to another person and they're not at all. So actually, when we feel offended, we need to not just analyse the person in front of us and be like, are they just an a-hole? And did they mean to offend me? We also need to look at our belief systems and where this came from, because majority of people do not have ill intent and they do not wish to make us feel like crap. But the way that we interpret it makes us feel like crap because of our own internalizations. So it's just getting that awareness, saying no one wants to piss you off. People are people pleasers. We want other people to be happy. We want to be part of a community. We want to be part of a tribe. We want people to like us. So no one is actually out there just to make you feel like shit, unless you're a bully.
Yes.
Of course.
We don't like bullies.
We don't like bullies.
But
normal people
no,
are not wanting to hurt you on purpose.
no, and off the back of what you said, people, most of the times when you're conversing with someone, it's either a friend of yours or a friend that's introducing you to someone, right? Or someone that you may be trying to build a new relationship with. Most of the time, if you think about it, you're in a conversation and you might be involved or excited about the conversation, so you may say something out of turn or say something that someone might be triggered by. They're not meaning offence by it, they're just involved in the conversation, and you just internally need to work out, is this worth arguing?
Yeah, so is this person intentionally being racist? Or did it just come across that?
Wow, what a direction to go down.
Oh, but also, like, everyone has different backgrounds. And for example, the boomers, they were brought up completely differently. They have different belief systems. So when I'm talking to someone and they'll say things that are, potentially racist, I will then question them, be like, oh, did you know that comes across as this? Was that your intention? And they're like, oh, no, it wasn't. Or if they say, yeah, it was, I'm like, okay, well, that's racist, and I'm not going to talk to you anymore. But, you know, questioning people and saying, like what you said earlier, when you said this, it came across as this.
Well, I perceived it as this.
I interpreted it like this.
I think
Is that how you intended? Because not everyone intends it to come out the way that it does.
I think that's the key word. You need to come across and say, I interpreted it like this.
Mm.
Because...
it's still your opinion.
Correct. Like, you and I might be listening to the same conversation from the camera, and the camera might say something, and you might think, that's fine, but I'm like, oh, dude, what are you up to? But it's the way I interpret it. So it's just being transparent. It's just saying, hey, look, this is the way I interpret. Is that what you're trying to get across? Oh, no, I'm so sorry. Awesome. Hey, cool. And then they don't need to fix it. It's just you understand them a bit better. And then
you understand it wasn't with ill intent or...
Exactly. And it comes...
and then you find peace because you're like, oh, okay, it puts my mind at ease. They didn't actually mean that.
Correct. And that's
the way that I interpret it.
And that's the biggest thing. I'm just thinking back to what we've been talking about. Don't sweat the small stuff. And we're talking about internal thing. And if you don't speak up, and if you don't think it's safe to speak up, and you don't raise anything with anyone and say, for example, hey, is this what you meant? Because this is the way I interpreted it, or this is the way I perceived it. Oh, no, that's not what I've meant at all. Oh, okay, awesome. I'm going to let that to bed. If I don't ask the question and I don't speak up, I'm going to
internalize that for maybe a year.
I'll be stewing on that. And then what?
And you'll hate that person forever.
Correct. As a bad result, I could go and have a vendetta against you, or for something, and be like, okay, cool. Last time I had with Janelle, she said this thing, and I was like, that was weird. I didn't agree with that. I thought that was quite out of order, but I didn't raise it with you. And then the next time someone speaks, oh, I heard Janelle talk about something really cool the other day. Oh, you agree with what she says? It starts putting you down a negative path, and then you get locked in even deeper. You're not sweating the small stuff at that point. That small things evolving into stuff. Yeah,
become like a big thing.
Yeah. So I think there's 3 parts to this now. We've dove in quite deep. Externally, have I got any physical control over what's happening?
Mm.
Internally, is it worth arguing? Did they really mean that? Or am I just overanalyzing? Step 3, if you think it's worth raising, raise it, mention it, and just get clarification.
Yeah.
If someone asks me to clarify anything I've said, I'm not going to find it offensive, because I struggle to speak English at the best of days. So 9 times out of 10, they're not going to understand what I'm saying. And there's no filter, so there's got to be some gibberish between the English in there somewhere.
I've seen you communicating with people, and sometimes I'm like, oh, are they going to take offence to that? But I've known you for 10 years. I know you mean well, but sometimes it's like, for me personally, I'm a very deep thinker, and I always think about how is what I'm about to say going to impact on this person based on what experiences they could have or belief systems. So I'm very cautious about what I say. And I'm an introvert, and I guess if I was an extrovert, then I would speak more quickly, and I probably wouldn't have those internal processes that I do have, because I would be speaking a lot more freely.
But not everyone is an introvert, and not everyone is... For example, you and I, you're an introvert, I'm an extrovert, whereas I'm happy to blurt out a whole bunch of words at once, and then once I've said them, internally think, you probably shouldn't have said that.
Whereas I internally think... I look at how the situation could go and all the different options, and then I'm like, no, I best not say anything. And everyone's like, why is she so quiet? It's like, because I've just thought through 50 different scenarios in my head before I even open my mouth, so I'm not going to open it.
You're Doctor Strange in Infinity War, sitting there just running through every scenario.
Pretty much. But yeah, that's how my brain works.
Yeah. But you can see how people would think, and people would think that I've potentially been ill-attended or said something. And that's just because not everyone's the same, and I think people that have raised things with me, I've very openly spoken about it and said, that's not what I meant, this is what I was trying to get across. Thanks for mentioning. And that happens in my job too. I say things and I've got the habit now, I'm probably not saying this right, so if you don't understand or it comes across wrong, let me know and I'll try to rephrase it. That's something I've worked on.
Because you're like, that's you for code name. I have no filter. So if you take offence or you don't get it, ask me.
But I think takeaway points for today, I'll give mine. I've said them before. do I have any physical effect over the outcome?
Any control?
Is it worth arguing, like internally, is this a fight worth fighting? Did it really offend me? How well do I know the person? And is it worth raising? Should I raise it? Yes, I should. Just to get some clarification. So I'm not sitting there stewing on it. Because the last thing you want to do is stew on something, and then that small thing that you're sweating becomes a big thing.
Yeah, and it will. And this is where anxiety comes from as well. Like, a lot of that comes from us really making things in our head become a lot bigger.
Yes.
And if we seek clarification, then it can alleviate that completely.
And what would your advice be to finalise or wrap up this podcast for someone that's out there that potentially sits and says, I sweat small stuff?
Stop it. My advice would be stop it.
And instantly...
That's my terrible life advice.
Instantly
you
they're
sweat small
thinking...
stuff, just stop it. Easy.
Instantly they're thinking, she's having to calm me.
Well, like what I said before, bringing awareness to those thoughts. They're like, why am I thinking this way? Why did this trigger me? Questioning these thoughts. Is this actually true? How do I know that it's true? And is my source of truth just an assumption, which a lot of the time it is, or do I have factual evidence that this is true? Because if it's just an assumption, then you don't know the truth unless you ask for clarity and actually get a verbal, confirmation. Then don't worry about it, because until you know the truth, it's like, why are you beating yourself up or, getting yourself into a state for no reason? You don't know what the outcome is. You don't know what the true reasoning or answer is. So why not focus on, the neutral or positive? Because until you know the truth, then you're beating yourself up for nothing.
So, good words. Know the truth, ask questions. They're not even asking questions, to other people. It's asking them to other people internally and everything. So
yeah, asking yourself these questions, I think, is the best place to start.
it's a good coaching approach. I love it. I don't think we need to say anymore.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I hope you guys could differentiate between our waffles and maybe got some nuggets of wisdom throughout. Maybe some terrible advice.
Whoa, hang on. You're making waffles and chicken nuggets.
Oh, now I feel like waffles and chicken nuggets. Is that a frowned upon combination? Because I'm here for it. What kind of sauce would you put on that? Would that be a maple syrup thing, or would that be like a tea sauce type of...
I think it's a trial and error type thing. We just got a bit of both. 2 lots.
I feel like we're getting a little bit off track.
This has been terrible life advice.
Yeah, thanks for listening, and see you next time.
Bye.